SoccerChronicle.com informa Los Cachirules, el podcast con más garra, pasión y picardía que hasta el equipo de todos. Y ahora con ustedes, Los Cachirules.
Good evening. How's it going? This is Los Cachirules, a weekly podcast that discusses Mexican soccer, international soccer, and other parts in between. My name is John Jagu. Good to have you with us tonight. We are on live on our YouTube page. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to do so. For all of our friends in Iowa who listen to us on the show, we'll be in Iowa this weekend. I cannot believe I have to go to Iowa this weekend. Ooh, too cold. With us today, as always, we have out in Oceanside, California, where it was a lovely 72 degrees today, we were told, is Daniel Preciado. How are you, sir?
Escondido.
Did I get it wrong again?
Damn it, John.
Yeah, same difference.
They all, all
No.
those Spanish-sounding names in the California, they all run together. You know what it is.
You hear me? That's me banging on my desk right now.
It was not. It was the chancellor
no.
to wife.
It was it was actually. It was a great, fantastic day, beautiful day in America's finest city.
And I got to ask you, your Santos is a team that could very well do some damage this year. I think that they're gonna get it together. They're always, when they're off, but when they're good, they're great. And that this could be one of those years.
Honestly, I hope you're right. I'm very skeptical, just because there's just a whole lot of newness to the team, and I'm not expecting overnight miracles. But I am encouraged that in his first home game, we were able to get a win. So to at least wash that bad taste from last season.
Aesthetically, the new uniforms they had were really nice, very clean, white with green strip, better than the green rugby stripes they used to have. So I think, like we said, I think Santos has a chance to do well. Over in Arizona, we have Fernando Regino, who watched his Monterrey team beat Puebla on the pitch and then celebrated by setting fire to the stadium.
La adicción, they came through that day, right?
Is that who
Saludos. I don't know. Allegedly, it was some fans that were wearing some stripes, but that's still alleged.
Alleged. So all the video evidence has been doctored. Is that what you're saying?
Hey, there's an investigation that's gonna take place. I think we should wait after the investigation's done.
Fair enough. And how many season ticket holders do you think are going to lose their season tickets for their indiscretions? What's the over and under? What's the over and under? I say about 10.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not.
Tickets?
John.
Yes. Hello. How are you, sir?
They already talked about this. They're just gonna suspend them for a bit.
Well, yeah, they were gonna take away their season tickets for a year, and then they would have to reapply.
Well, that's not bad.
I did not hear that
It's
actually.
worth it.
Yeah, I think that's a worthy penalty, and of course, whatever. And then that should also make them pay for a little of the damage too. So anyway.
Well, I know they just recently remodeled the stadium, the Cuauhtémoc, but
It was their first game in the new stadium. They torched it.
Allegedly, of course. Yes.
Allegedly. But regardless of that, Monterrey looked great, and they have a really good chance to, again, be a team that can contend deep into the season and probably the playoffs, so we should definitely keep an eye on them as well.
Absolutely.
Well, how are you, sir, out in California? Enjoy another Dorados loss this weekend?
You know what? I haven't seen any Liga MX games. Not one. But the extra cancha, that's kept me very entertained.
Oh, so the stuff off the field is it's your novela.
Yes, especially the stuff coming from America camp.
Oh, I guess that's something we'll have to discuss a little bit later. We'll have to put that one on the back burner. Let's move on to Philadelphia, bracing themselves for I saw a foot to 2 feet of snow coming up I guess over the next few days.
Yeah.
Mr. Ronald Luna, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm fearing those 12 inches. Yeah.
That's what she
Whoa,
said.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
All right, got it.
That was a satellite delay there. I think there was some latency.
Nah, yeah, we're getting we're prepared. We're prepared.
So when it's that bad, do you send the trucks out?
Nah, hell no.
Ronnie, at what point does it get scary? Around 8+? I'm just
Not the full 12.
all right.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Useful information for you folks out there. All right, so this is Los Cachirules. We have a good group here, a good cross section of fans from Liga MX, and then folks that even though as they say they haven't watched the games, they know what's going on, so we can certainly talk about that. First thing you want to talk is Extra Cancha. We saw something on Friday night that frankly just cracked me up, and it was perfect, and it was a team owner who, for whatever reason, was sitting in the booth next to where the ref sits, who was happened to be visiting, and after Veracruz was given a really harsh red card. I mean, it was harsh. It was probably not a red card, but those things happen. I mean, it's not the end of the world. And the owner, Mr. Fidel Kuri, is that his name?
Yeah.
Fidel Kuri starts talking to him. He grabs him by the shirt and gives him a little shake, and there was a bit of a ruckus. For you folks that have seen that video, I'm sure you have. The video that I saw today was after the game. He was in the parking lot going after the guy. So I'm sure some words were said. And I was going to play some audio of Mr. Suri talking on Univision, but I couldn't get it to work, where he apologizes and gives his reasons for why it happened, which we'll discuss in a minute. But first of all, y'all's reaction. What should happen to this guy? Is anything going to happen to this guy? And what's going to happen to Codesal, Edgardo Codesal, the Uruguayan naturalized Mexican ref who happened to be the ref in the 1990 World Cup final between Germany and Argentina, where he too gave not only a dubious red card, but a dubious penalty to give Germany a 1-0 win?
Well, Kuri's reaction was obviously not professional and not to the standard of an owner. But I will say I do understand his frustration. I'm not as some of you guys know, I'm not a fan of Codesal. I think the guy I think he has to go. I think he's just a very controversial figure. Forget the Argentina West Germany thing. Forget he was also responsible for the biggest melee in Mexican soccer, was the Chivas America semifinal of 1983. He was also responsible for that. But it's just like some of you guys can remember a couple of years back, like in 2004, 2003, the whole Spygate with Felipe Ramos Rizzo. I don't know if you guys remember that, where they basically spied on Ramos Rizzo because they thought that Ramos Rizzo was staging a coup d'etat of sorts. They were trying to oust Arturo Yamasaki and Codesal. I don't see the officiating getting better with Codesal. I think these referees think that they're part of the game in the sense that they think they're part of the show.
That's the reason why things are the way they are. I mean, let's take a look at the career trajectory of a ref in Mexican soccer. So they'll do the refereeing, How do you make a name for yourself? He called a great games. Oh man, that whatever.
Well, you're right. You're right because I mean, think about it. I mean, in Europe, like the Italian guy, I forget his name, the very famous bald guy.
Perluigi Colina,
Oh yeah,
that guy.
okay, Pulina and stuff like that. I mean, the guys that basically really treat it as a profession. I mean, they go into officiating and they try to better the profession. Now, think of how many guys we have pundits in media. You know, you have Bonifacio, you had Arturo Yamasaki, you had Codesal, you had what's his name, Armando Archundia, you have Arturo Bricio, you have a bunch of these guys.
Is that these guys they want that gig, they want that TV gig, so they'll do that for a couple of years, and then the one that really surprised me was Archundia. I thought he was better than that. I thought that he could just go. Maybe he should have been the guy to get to, because I thought he was a ref,
he was.
He wasn't a media. I mean, he wasn't an attention whore. It wasn't all the game wasn't about him. He was going to call the game as he saw it.
Well,
very fair.
You know, you're right. I mean, you're right. You know, no. But anyhow, what I was saying, you know, with Codesal, well, I understand why. You know, like, and I've mentioned this before in the past. You know, in our private chats and stuff like that. You know, for the last 40 years, the head of Mexican officiating, they've been foreigners, basically naturalized foreigners, and obviously there's money to be made in officiating in Mexico, be it in punditry or other gigs.
Right.
And I understand why perhaps the federation wants those naturalized individuals, because I mean you're not gonna. I guess they're thinking, okay, well maybe they're not gonna be an Americanista, or they're not gonna be a cementero or stuff like that. I can understand that, but it's just these guys they've really done a lousy job in my opinion.
But you can say that about any group of refs anywhere in the world.
You're right.
If a ref game 98% correct, it's the two plays they know. This guy's just terrible. Oh man, can you believe that they even gave this guy a badge? I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, here's
that's the problem that I do have. I have an issue with you. Not issue, but I agree with you in the sense that those two guys. I mean, come on. But that doesn't surprise me either, because Liga MX imports everything. They import players, they import general managers. So why not import the refs?
I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't see why they need to, but I just think that they haven't done a good job, and I think it's time that I think Codesal needs to go.
But you're right, in the sense that he's too much of a magnet. I mean, and all the things you listed about, he made his name for just dubious, terrible decisions, as opposed to a guy who, to me, if a ref goes unnoticed, he did a great job. I mean, that is what you want. And to me, Archundia would be a guy that would just call it. I mean, I remember the Germany-Italy semifinal, which could have been contentious as hell. Let's face it, both teams just started switching. And Archundia, like in the 15th minute, brought the captains over and said, "Boys, that's it." And the players looked at him, shook, walked away, and it was a clean game the rest of the way.
Yeah.
So, as far as the owner, he was on Univision, and if you folks haven't seen it, I would suggest you play it on YouTube. We can find that on their YouTube page. The owner discusses why he did what he did. He said, "Listen, I'm a very passionate fan from my Veracruz, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help the players win. Got the better of me, and I apologize." He said it was, it's something that seems to be happening constantly, and if that's the case, then that guy's got to go. About Codesal. But then he went on to say, and they asked him, tell us about today. He said, "Well, it was a good day. It was a game day. I got to the stadium, had a nice dinner, had a few pops."
Hold on, John. Hold on. Sorry to interrupt you. Hey, who's watching TV there, guys? Put it on mute.
Hey, Chris, put on mute, man.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear it? Well, what's playing?
It's some guy talking.
It sounds like somebody's watching like an old Mexican Western. Like you said.
I don't know. I don't know if that's me, but give me 1 second. I'll go ahead and turn it off.
Anyway.
Bienvenido anyway.
Yeah, good seeing you, buddy.
That helped.
That did it.
That did it.
Thank you. Thank you. And as I was saying, so this Mr. Kuri says, yeah, I had a nice dinner, and I had a few pops, unos tragos, and luego otros tragos. And he said, well, I probably shouldn't have done what I did. I apologize. So he was, I'm not going to say he was drunk because there's no proof of that. But he definitely had altered his mind just a little. And good for him.
He was pretty agitated, though. I mean, it was,
Sure, I get it. I get it. And it could have been that just what Codesal shouldn't have been saying anything. He shouldn't have even been having a conversation with the guys. He should say, here, look, I'm just here to watch the game.
Well, Cody didn't respond.
Yeah, I'm not sure he did because there are a couple of the shots. Well, at least what we got to see on. And obviously, hello everybody. Sorry, I jumped in a little bit late. But what they showed is pretty much just Cody like in his face, and he kept going back, and he would pat him on the back, really sort of passively aggressive. It's kind of passive aggressive, and then he would come back and get in his face, and then eventually just the lid blew off, and he just went off. And I mean, I don't really care what he says. It's unacceptable, really.
Well, actually, you can see his lips move. Like once he was talking to him, he wasn't saying anything. But Codesal you can see his lips move, and he's saying something. And in the interviews, Kuri says that he's like, well, he deserved the red, and it was a good play and all that, a good call and everything. And the first version of what he said on Friday, what Kuri said was actually he like cussed at him and stuff. I forget exactly.
Yeah,
what the phrase was.
he said que me vale madre. Or
Yeah,
exactly. He said something to that effect. Now, again, his Kuri's reaction obviously is not not that of a professional, but
that's when he got in his face. That's when he got like face to face.
Right. Now, keep in mind last year or the year before, what's his name, Fassi got suspended for 4 months, basically also getting in the face of a referee, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if we're going to.
So you're saying if there's precedence, then that's what this guy should get.
Yeah, I mean, 4 months. The whole thing about a year. Yes, there was a microaggression and stuff like that, and yeah, he shouldn't touch Codesal. But when the first I heard of it, because I didn't watch the entire game. When I started getting some tweets about Kuri hitting Codesal, and I thought they were throwing around the fisticuffs. No, I mean, it was just, granted, he was making physical contact, and there's no need for that. But, it's like they were trying to make it like it was some sort of, brawl.
It wasn't actually him. It was one of his little crony guys that was...
And I understand that, and his crony, and obviously Kuri incited that, and I understand that, and he should be, held accountable for that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, is that worth 4 months, honestly?
Well, I think the fact that he chased him into the parking lot kept looking for him... I feel like that's probably where everything sort of boiled over anyway, because I understand that, yeah, he literally went out to the parking lot in the middle of the crowd, and he didn't find him or anything, and they were able to calm him down, but had he found him, I think things could have gone a lot worse, and I think maybe that's where this isn't really a matter for the league or even for the FMF. This is about the owners, and they literally pull the strings on everything, so they need to make a decision. And you got to wonder how many more feel the way Vergara feels about Kuri, because Vergara, he's the kind of guy you put a mic in front of him, and he'll just give you news for days. And the stuff that he said yesterday was pretty inflammatory, and I would think that's the kind of stuff they would deal with within
internally.
Yeah, I would think so, because, I mean, going on TV and saying that the guy has a drinking problem, which apparently he does, and, that he shouldn't behave like that, which we already know he shouldn't. Yes, he's a public figure. Not only is he in charge of the team, but he's also, a politician. So
my take on this is very simple. Vergara has no room to talk because I mean he was gonna get into a round of fisticuffs with a fan.
I know.
With a fan.
It's even worse.
That's what Kuri said too. He brought that up specifically.
You know?
Yeah, that's it.
He brought that up specifically, and he also brought up the fact that Chivas is on the table, the censo table, so he don't need to talk. He needs to worry about his own Chivas going down.
Yeah. But now, I mean, it's just there's probably so many instances that I can think of. I mean, I can remember Lebrija, chasing down officials. I can remember Perez Stoifer. I can remember. Just a bunch of people chasing down, referees after the game and getting, into verbal, disagreements and, little touching here and there. It's not right. It's not professional. I get that, but to paint it that it was some sort of physical abuse and that's like.
They're all out of line, I think. Codisa's out of line for even saying.
If he did
say that it was an okay call, because that call was crazy. There was no way that was a red or even a yellow.
Yeah. Here's a few things.
Yeah, but he's got nothing to do with that. I mean, he's in the stands, going after him is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous for him as well, and then it's also ridiculous for Vergara to butt in and all this stuff. It's just a whole mess.
Yeah, but keep in mind, couple weeks before, months before, Veracruz. They were also eliminated unjustly from the
last Liguilla. Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, obviously, there's bitterness in Kuri and Veracruz, and that probably had something to do with it
because you know what? Veracruz they're just not good enough for have the kind of clout.
They're a small team.
But okay, I mean, I didn't want to talk about this right now. I was going to bring it later in the show. But
we'll bring it up later. We'll bring it up later. We'll put it in your pocket. It's okay. You don't have to.
No. It's minor. It's minor. It's minor. I mean, I can understand Kuri's frustration at the officiating, and obviously he's at the head of the officiating because when you look at the America Atlas game over the weekend, Atlas got away with murder with Kahneman's. With Kahneman's two-studded, tackle, and you obviously saw the cut, on Zambuesa, and then obviously, what's his name, Mickey Arroyo comes in defense of his teammate, and granted he didn't react, properly.
I gotta tell you, Arroyo's not the best example there because he's one of the guiltiest parties when it comes to deceiving the refs anyway. So I mean, I take anything that Arroyo says.
Let's stop right. Let's stop right there.
Okay.
I want to talk about we're not getting into America just yet. We'll have your America corner in a little bit later.
Yeah.
So you can go off on that.
I was about to go off.
You can have your
Por favor.
Your mid-show tirade during the America segment.
That's Ronnie's bread and butter right there. Let's do it.
But anyway, so just a couple of things to take away from this. First of all, if the guy has a drinking problem, yes or no. But the fact that he went out to the parking lot, the toughest guys in the world go out in the parking lot, asking for a fight, knowing that the other guy is nowhere near. Like the worst thing that could happen was the guy to show up. Like,
and he was surrounded by all his guaruras anyway. So like, what was going to happen? What was going to happen?
Secondly, the only reason Vergara said what he said is to just deflect all attention off of him onto this guy, so that Chivas could just quietly go about their business of watching Dorados lose.
I thought he wanted the attention though. You see the picture they took of him, of the whole team. He's like in the middle with the jersey and stuff. Everyone is in suits.
Yeah, he's such a homer, man.
Okay, so let's talk about the other incident that happened extra cancha during the games, and that was the Estadio Cuauhtémoc opening its doors again after about I guess like a year's worth of remodeling. It looks great. They kind of enclosed it.
Looks like my shower curtain.
Yeah.
There it is.
Enclosure of Cuauhtémoc.
It's an odd. It's an odd choice. The color and like this weird sort of patterns they chose. I think it's kind of like a weird ripoff of I think Bayern Munich's stadium has that really cool light up thing that they do. I mean, this is just like static. It doesn't the colors don't ever change. But go on. I mean, it's terrible what happened. I mean, the fans. I mean,
what I didn't understand. I understand that if your team is losing and you're frustrated because you spent a big wad of money down to go see your team. You travel, however far it is, get to Puebla, a couple hour flight, whatever it is, and your team loses and they suck and you're mad and you take out your, not like that, but you take out, but they were winning. That's the part that I don't get. I mean, they had a great game outside of Hobbit's tremendous goal. I mean, they dominated from stem to stern, and they had another team that looks great.
I think the worst. Sorry to interject, but I think just quickly, to me, the worst. Somebody's losing their. Somebody's flipping their lid over there, but to me, the worst part is simply the fact that it was the fans of Monterrey who just got a new stadium, like a couple months ago, and no one's gone over there and ripped out the seats and set fire to the stands. I don't know. It's just.
From what it looks like in the video, it seems like it was an accident. Somebody dropped their bengala, and those cheap seats just caught fire.
No, there are accidents, and there are accidents. I mean, there's no reason for them to bring fireworks or bengalas or anything to the game. It's just
they bring it every game. That's a staple of Mexican soccer.
I don't know if I'd say it's a staple. I mean, some fan bases.
Is that their story? That the little Roman candle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's a cheap excuse, to be honest. It's a lack of respect, and furthermore, it's a lack of respect too.
They did try to put it out by peeing on it. So.
Oh well, I mean, expect nothing less from the classiest, But it's just the worst part is actually the fact that Puebla has asked Monterrey to pay for it, and they wanted like $3,000 or something like that. Like they obviously they priced them up, they marked them up.
I don't think that Puebla asked them. I think the league said, Monterrey, you're paying for that.
Well, either way, they have to. I mean,
yeah, the league was swift. I like the way that the league, the few times, that we see the league actually, take.
Looking at the pictures, though, those are some cheap seats. There needs to be a section. You know how they like running when they score a goal, they like run up and down the stands and stuff.
Right.
That might. I mean, if people were switching seats and stuff like that and stepping on that, I see that.
They just.
That's what I'm saying. It was cheaply made. It's easy to catch fire.
It's like they wrapped it with egapac, is what they did. It's like duct tape.
Yeah, they obviously cut some corners when they remodeled the stadium. But honestly, I feel like that's besides the point anyway. I feel like I do feel like the league is kind of doing it, and they're sort of making an effort here to move away from the barras bravas and the supporters groups and really have a more family-friendly atmosphere, which some teams already do. Some teams don't really have a big supporters section like that. So the newer stadiums, the ones that get remodeled, are probably going to do away with those sort of walking stands anyway. They're going to try to do what the Premier League did, what they did in the late 80s and early 90s, where they get rid of those stands and they put seats in, and you pay for a seat, you sit down and you watch the game. You can scream, you can yell, you can sing, but you don't need to be jumping up and down the seats. You don't need to be tearing them out. You don't need to be burning anything. You just come and watch the game.
But isn't there a section even in England for the supporters group to go out crazy?
Some stadiums, I think some older stadiums still have them. Yeah. But if you look at the Emirates, for example, or Stamford Bridge, even Old Trafford, I'm pretty sure don't have any of those standing, areas. So I mean,
I guess you could take a cup of tea to the game.
You could if you wanted to, probably in a mug or something. Lace it up with some whiskey if you wanted to.
Oh, believe me, it's still plenty rough. It's just everyone has their own individual seat.
I do gotta say though that I gotta that fire that safety hazard of the seats catching fire. I gotta commend the Rayado fans that they stayed their composure and didn't stampede out of fear of being caught in the middle of that fracas. So I gotta say,
quite the optimistic look you got there, Fernando.
Well, I'm just saying, it could have been a lot worse, man. It could have been Hillsborough with those cheap seats right there.
Well, regardless of the fact that it happened, I think takes away from the fact that the Monterrey has a really good team, and
I agree.
A chance to do really well. I mean, as they showed in this game, and that kid, that 18-year-old Central, good Lord, he is fantastic.
Yes, he is. We kind of talked about him a little bit during the last season, and I said that was a player, definitely a player to watch. I mean, it's not the first time that he has hit assist from. Yeah, had a couple last season too. He's got some Rafa Marquez in him, you know.
And he was the one that scored the goal against Nigeria, right? Wasn't he the one that did the weave through the Nigerian?
No. He wasn't a part of the current the last under-17s. I think right now he just got his first call up to the under-18s, so he'll be a part of the under-20 cycle. This one coming up.
He needs to be on the Olympics. I mean, period. They need to put him on the Olympic team.
You know what? I think with Gutierrez, with Potro, he's a bit of an old school kind of coach, and he has his base defined. I don't see him moving away from Jordan Silva and Carlos Salcedo. I'd see him, he'd be quicker to bring in someone like Edgardo Marin, or even Briseño from Tigres than he would bring in Montes. He's not going to experiment so close to the Olympics, but I agree with you because yeah, I know, right? Like, I mean, if it was anything like 4 years ago, Herrera would have never made the team under Gutierrez because Herrera only snuck in, 3 months before the tournament. But you're right. I mean, he's a kid with a bright future. I think that him and Salcedo are guys to really keep an eye on when it comes to center backs for Mexico.
Yeah, he gives me hope there, because I was getting a little worried over that, thinking, man, because Briseño was the guy that I was hoping that was going to be, finally have the light come off and figure things out, because that's the area, at least national team wise, where Mexico.
Yeah, because physically, Briseño has got a lot of good, like a really good tool set physically, but he's like I remember during the Under-17 World Cup, even when Mexico won it, he was a little shaky then, and that's the point where you sort of hope that with more experience and more game time with the professionals, he could iron those things out. And he has to a certain degree. I mean, he did pretty well at Atlas, and he's done okay when he's gotten playing time under Ferretti. But I'm not entirely sure how he projects in the future towards the senior national team. I think even like I said, Montes and Salcedo, those guys. It looks a little bit more clear for them, their pathway towards the national team. Not so sure about Briseño. I have my doubts about him.
All right. Speaking of Atlas defenders, they got one of their prodigal sons back for him to finish out a string, and it looks like chances are pretty good that he's going to be finishing out the string on a wheelchair the way he's going. It's just when you're at a certain age, muscles tear and they take a little longer to heal for you youngsters. It kind of sucks. But that's what's happening to Rafa Marquez, who only played a half, and they announced that he had a micro tear in his muscle, which is like, I get a micro tear in my muscle, stretching over the fridge to grab the fry make or whatever. Just how on earth can that?
Yeah, he'll be out for he's going to be out for at least a week, they said. So then you got
Geritol. I mean, come on.
Well, even when he was at Hellas Verona, you saw him. He was out every other week. And it was always the same thing: muscle injuries. He wasn't quite fit.
He's like in his mid-40s. I mean, give the guy a break.
Anyway, just put some big game, buff it out,
Yeah, but you could tell the kind of impact that he had, in week one. I think he was really, and even the first half of this most recent game, I mean, the guy is just class, and even with his lack of pace and movement, and he's a little limited in that sense right now, he did a really good job to keep the midfield and the defense really compact and allow Atlas to really sort of push forward and make things happen. The moment he came out, I mean, they were lost, and I think that's
lost ever since.
The plan A should not be, what happens when Rafa's on the field. The plan A should be what happens when he's not on the field, because I think we can all sort of surmise that he's going to be out more than he's going to be able to play anyway. I mean, like you said, at his age, if he plays one game every 10 days, I think that's a victory for them.
What does the future hold for him? Is he gonna go into broadcasting?
You mentioned coaching.
Does he want to coach?
You mentioned coaching, and I think he'd be a really good coach.
Was that recent? Because I remember a long time ago, at least when he was with Barcelona, that he said that he doesn't want a post playing football career. I guess if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading an interview with him. I don't know, a few months ago. It was after Juan Carlos Osorio went to visit him in Italy, and he briefly mentioned that, he'd like to give it a shot. I don't know, if that's just one of the many things that he has planned. But I think, I don't know, I feel like his talent and his would be wasted, behind the scenes if he's not involved with the development of players, especially young players.
Here's what I'd like to see.
Before Grupo Salinas took over Atlas, there was an investment group that obviously it didn't come to fruition, but they were trying to get Atlas from the old group, and Rafa Marquez wanted to be part of that group. So I was under the impression that he wanted to get into the management aspect of the game and not so much like the coaching. So I mean, so
he wants to be more of an owner.
More of an executive, more of an owner. To my knowledge, I haven't seen anything about him getting his coaching certificate or any of that sort.
Because the national team would be his. The fact that none of the guys that are older than him seems to be getting into coaching, and basically there's like a massive void that's already kind of evident, but it's only getting worse because it doesn't seem like any of these ex-players recently retired, or at least I don't see anybody really pursuing that life. I've always been hopeful because I don't think at least anybody in this current and last generation of footballers that anyone's ever seen and understood and viewed the game as well as Rafa. To not have him at least pointing, at least on the sidelines, pointing and giving direction, I honestly think it'd be a gigantic shame, a big loss.
Well, it's not a problem, Dan. Because if you think about it, what I'm saying is that for the most part, the coaches, the successful coaches weren't really the stars,
right.
in their playing careers. Mesa was a career backup for Andres Marin in Cruz Azul. Obviously La Fuente.
The big difference, though, Ronnie, is that
La Volpe was a goalie
because of his mind. It's
a backup.
Most of the reason that he was as good as he was had nothing to do with, or not nothing, but had mostly to do with what's between his ears more than what's on his body. Like he's always been slow. He's never been terribly athletic. It's his vision and his brains that's always what's made him that good. And so I think that it would make an easy transition despite his stardom and the fact that a lot of ex-stars don't do well. I think that's why he would do well, because of just the type of position that he played and the type of player that he was.
Type of leader he is.
Well, they usually say that goalkeepers and center backs. I mean, this might just be anecdotal evidence anyway, but they people usually say that they make the best coaches simply because they spent their whole careers, sitting back and seeing everything unfold in front of them. So that somehow gives them I guess a better appreciation and understanding for the game. If that were to be true, then I think that Rafa could potentially, exploit that. But
they also say that players that were more offensive players tend to be more defensive in coaching, and vice versa. Players that were more defensive, being goalkeeping, being defenders, are more offensive in their coaching. Now, is there really, empirical evidence? I don't know, but off the top of my head, it seems to be the case. At least in the Mexican.
How does that explain Dunga? He was a defensive midfielder and became the most defensive coach of all time.
It's not. No.
Yeah, I mean, he may just be the anomaly. He may not be. He's a rule to the exception.
Yeah, but again, I don't think it's. There's a lot of Mexican coaches.
Yeah, reverse that, Christian.
there's a lot of Mexican coaches. Not all of them were stars and stuff like that. But I'm not expecting. I mean, I'm not expecting national team players to go into coaching because obviously, for more than 30 years, 40 years, the salaries in Mexico in First Division have been good enough where players don't have to go into coaching to make ends meet. They have a.
If they love what they do, then they'll go into coaching. Absolutely.
But
they have to love it. They can't just go into coaching because they think that that's their next step. I agree with you. If they don't. So if Rafa wants to go into coaching, it'd be great. If he wants to be an executive, I think that he'll be great at that too. If he, frankly, and I know some of you are better looking than he is, but he's a really good looking guy. He can go. I'm not kidding. He has a good face. He can go make movies. He can go into make movies.
He could become a mayor.
He has a face.
Show's over, guys.
I can see him losing his head though.
Take the compliment and run with it.
That he is.
He's not as good.
He end up being the next Kuri or doing something like that.
I know.
novela.
I know. If you guys were in a room and he walked in, he would be the ugliest dude there. I know.
Wow, that is so cool, man. Thank you for that. I needed to hear that.
No, but going back to the coaching, and we won't talk about it because I know we hashed it before, but I mean, you look at I think the last time I was at the stadium for the final, the Gold Cup final here in Philadelphia. I mean, I was like, dude, there's a shitload of players. Braulio Luna, you have Trujillo, you had a bunch of them, and these guys are choosing. They're choosing
media,
TV
yeah,
because it's a stable job.
Sure. And it's got longevity. They can. I mean, if they bounce out of a network, they can find some other network. And
pretty good.
What's that?
He does a good job.
I agree.
Who's Mariano?
No, Braulio Luna does really. He's very good at TV.
You know who's not? You know who's not very good though is Osvaldo Sanchez.
No.
I think his commentary is just simply.
Gonzalo Pineda pretty good too.
Gonzalo Pineda is a very smart kid. I mean, he finished law school.
Jorge Campos is terrible.
Yeah, he is. But he's not there.
The worst.
Is that why
he's the worst, man? He's such a clown.
In law school?
Pineda finished law school while playing for Pumas. He went to he's and that was a plan that he had regardless of whether or not his career panned out or not, which I think is very impressive.
Coaching, I want to ask Joel, who Chivas has. Wait, hang on.
Wow.
Chivas has one guy, a former player who's a coach, it's Ramoncito. And then is he coaching one of the U teams or what is he coaching?
Yeah, I think he's in charge of the under.
Wrong Joel.
He's in charge of the under 20s. If anything, that's an aspect of the Mexican soccer culture that can be still developed. I mean, like you said, the former players are going into immediate careers, and to really do nothing more than being pundits. It's not like any of them are off. Like Kike Fonseca's over at Televisa, and I mean, some of the stuff. He did some stuff for beIN Sports during the summer for Copa America, and when he was surrounded by a good panel, his insights were pretty good. But now he's in Televisa. He's surrounded by a bunch of suits that are more concerned about being overly cynical about stuff than they are about really analyzing games. And so he kind of drops to a level. So, I'm not sure. But, I mean, that's an aspect that we could develop even further. That's something that could potentially grow.
But the top players have options. What I'm saying is that, the journeymen, the guys that are basically that spend 7-10 years and made a pretty a career that probably are not going to go into TV. Those are the guys that are going into coaching. So I mean, I don't think there's a short. The faceless guys. And
you know what? I want to add to that. If you're not well connected,
right?
You're not going to get that many opportunities. And we could see it with Galindo. He's coaching like.
He's in third division team here in the U.S. now. I mean,
yeah. And
are you saying that because of his looks, like Claudio Suarez, or is that what you're trying to say, Holly?
He doesn't have long blonde hair like Almeida did. But he's.
Well, Yeah, there's that.
I don't think that's fair. Let's just keep in mind Nacho Ambriz, just throwing it out there.
That's true. That's true.
You shut your mouth.
Hey, John,
But I mean, you
Alright,
can see it with
boys.
other players like Hugo Sanchez. I mean, if you see his record, it's pretty good.
hey, John,
And-
up the
Yes.
volume on your clips, man.
Oh yeah, sure. Good lord. Sorry about that.
Actually, Joel, can you elaborate though on Ramoncito? Because I'm actually hopeful for him because
I think, you know what?
he's one of my favorite players.
They wanted him to take over as coach, but that was when the De La Torres were in charge of Chivas, and now that they're gone, he got demoted. So if you heard Vergara, he was talking about Omar Bravo being the coach. But he says like 4 years down the line, like send them to Europe, and then bring them back.
I mean, that's an idea. I mean, the preparation to be a coach is it's extensive, and you need experience, and you need, I'm of the idea that players should work their way up, working with kids and then, up to professionals. I mean, there are maybe some exceptions, the guys that can step right in, but...
Yeah, but we don't give a lot of our own. Like, you had Joel Tiburon Sanchez, and he had done a pretty good job with Colibríes.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's more guys, like, in second division, and a lot of them get looked over, and we'll end up with dudes like Almeida, who have similar experience, but abroad.
Yeah.
But abroad, and we our owners tend to value that more.
Hey, who's
I have a
coaching FC Juarez? They just beat Chivas. 1-0.
Well...
Go by a mix.
Hey,
Well, they're the reigning champions,
Probably happy with
Almeida's
that.
record now is officially worse than Chepo's when Chepo got
Yeah, but
sacked.
they
What are
already
you talking
been there,
about?
done
He
that
won
with
the
Copa
championship.
MX.
What happened?
Joel, I have a question for you. You're talking about coaches and connecteds, and I know that you're, somewhat connected down there. What was the real reason that Camoranesi left Coras?
The story is that Coras was going to play a Copa MX game against Chivas,
Right.
and Higuera went to talk to Camoranesi while the players were warming up, and this was like in the back, like in the locker rooms. So who knows what he told him? He had just taken over Chivas, so he probably told him to drop the game.
You think you told him?
But what happened was that Camoranesi quit right there. He left, and his players didn't even know the game was about to start.
Because I remember I was going to watch the game. I thought, oh man, Camoranesi, I want to see how this guy. That I thought was really cool that he was coaching down there.
I think he was doing a pretty decent job, I think.
Well, he lives in
From what I
Nueva
remember.
Vallarta. I'm sure he lives on the coast. I mean, good lord, it's gorgeous.
Well, I think he took a coaching gig in Argentina, no?
Oh, did he?
I think
Well,
he...
regardless. Okay, good.
Yeah, I think he took a coaching gig, not very recently, maybe like a couple of weeks ago, or at least that's what was being mentioned. But it's kind of like the same thing that's been happening with within the league with the players themselves, or the younger players that can't find opportunities are being loaned out to teams in the second division. So maybe something similar could be done. I mean, I know Joel already mentioned it. There's a couple guys down there that get looked over.
Yeah, and you know what? Good thing you mentioned Camoranesi, because Tiburon Sanchez, it was his first gig as coach. It was him and Gustavo Nápoles, and they made the final. They lost it on penalty kicks, I believe, to Necaxa, and they fired him after that.
Yeah.
And I think and it was Higuera. I think he already had Camoranesi, and they went more with Camoranesi didn't really have experience, and they went with, he won a World Cup, and he was with Juventus, and they valued that. I think they, and they haven't really done much since.
It's because it's all labels.
Well, maybe if Juan Carlos Osorio manages to achieve some level of success with the national team, maybe that could prompt the first division club owners to maybe have a little more maybe not be so close-minded when it comes to coaching opportunities for younger coaches. Because, I mean, I think the next, obviously, in my opinion, the next question would be, who are the up-and-coming coaches? How many coaches are in first division teams, whether it's an assistant or with part of a coaching staff in any capacity, that one could say maybe within the next 2 to 3 tournaments could be potentially taking over a team? Even the younger coaches in the league are mostly foreign. Almeida, you know, the guy at Santos. Who are the Mexican coaches? Vuse, Nacho Ambriz, Miguel Herrera with Xolos, and I can't, honestly, I can't think of any. I mean, maybe I'm missing 1 or 2, but that's a pretty low ratio for 18 teams in a professional league.
You know, you guys were talking about Rafa Marquez becoming a coach. I think Rafa can get his career started if he starts being assistant to La Volpe at Chiapas. That'll be amazing. I think he will be very successful if he does that.
I think that's exactly where Rafa wants to live when he...
In Chiapas, yeah.
Yeah, more humid than Houston, Chiapas.
Yeah, it's straight jungle. Yeah, I don't know.
Laredo, yeah.
Or he could just go to Nicaragua for like 2-3 hours, and he'll get his accreditation.
It worked for Hugo. You know?
Hey man, why do you have to have accreditation to be a coach?
Well, you should. You should. You should show competence.
I think FIFA requests it.
Does it really? You have to have your.
You need some levels.
You know what? Yeah, because they were saying something about if you're gonna be on the field.
Hello.
See, that's what happens when you start.
That's Hugo. You start talking about Hugo, man.
No, the equipment manager or something, just so he could be on the field. I mean, not on the field.
The assistant coach for Zidane, he doesn't have the proper credentials, and so they signed him up as the ball boy or the water boy or something.
Exactly, that's my point. Why do you have? I mean, Zidane couldn't have the credentials to say he's the line chalker on the stand. He's going to be the guy that puts the line. Oh, and he's going to stay for the rest of the game and sit on the bench.
Yeah. Gets paid a couple zillions at the same time too.
All right, so we had a little Chivas talk. It's only fair. I know that we bottled it up a little earlier, but I think it is time for some America. So I believe Ronnie, you had requested a tirade.
Wait, no, I was next in line, dude. It's related to America.
It's related to America.
It's the extra cancha with the actress.
So you are officially cock blocking Ronnie's opening time.
I'm officially
we're crossing stream.
Joel has go ahead, Joel. You're gonna.
Joel has the conch.
No. Maybe Ronnie could enlighten us what's going on with the actress that she claimed to have had a kid from Layun, and now she's saying it was Aquivaldo's kid.
Yeah.
So I mean, these dudes were double dipping. But you know what? You know what?
The proper term is pig roasting.
Well, Ronnie, I think there was some airtight scene going in there because I've seen the picture of the kid and he looks like neither of them. So there could be a third gunman, huh?
Damn.
So okay, so the kid's not Chocomilqueo.
No.
So it's not like Ivalos then.
I thought Aquivaldo was married and had kids already.
Well, you can still have kids even if you're married.
Well, I mean, yes, you can, but I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. I thought I could have sworn he was happily married.
He was.
They're not all Mormon and faithful like Beto, okay?
Well, two women talked. So.
That whole Madonna Horth complex. Go ahead.
No, but the other thing, coming out of America. Well, I'll get into my little tirade first. I was talking about the brutal attack on Sambu from Atlas Kahneman. And it was too studded. It should have been red carded. And then the little melee with what's his name, Felipe Baloy and stuff like that, basically, choking one of our players. And obviously Arroyo got caught in. he shouldn't have, he shouldn't have been provoked and stuff like that. But what pissed me off was, same thing that happened in the fight, in the semis with Pumas, is that I'm still not seeing the game. I'm still not seeing, the games called both ways.
So you had like a Vietnam flashback when you saw the red come out. You're like,
well, shit,
God,
even
when the red cards came out.
And it's funny because even what's his name, Martinoli and Garcia and stuff like they're saying, Atlas should have had 3 guys, sent off right then and there. And obviously America is the one that's getting got sent off. Arroyo got sent off, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, we're back to square one. We're basically getting our players sent off, and the opposing team nothing.
Which, by the way, before you go any further, if I forget, we have to make sure that we, because I don't know if you guys talked about this, but the whole racism that what's his name was Quintero was crying about, it's already been proven that it didn't happen.
It wasn't proven. It was just no evidence. Big difference.
Which means it didn't happen.
No, meaning it
was a tree that fell in the forest, and nobody was there to hear
it. Exactly. But
I'm glad you made that clarification, Ronnie.
Yeah. So no, but that really that's.
So you're just mad that the refs are calling the games a little heavy-handed toward America. And
well, did you guys see that? Did you
started to develop a reputation for
crime?
This brusque, rough play of theirs.
Did you see Sambu rest his feet on the ice cooler where you could see his injury?
Yeah. What would happen to anybody if they took a cleat to the shin? Do you think they'll get scraped a little boo? Do you get smarted?
No, I'm just saying.
Here's the thing with Samba though. He goes in and it's like almost a 50-50 ball. He gets the first, but he goes in full speed. It's like the Javier, what's his name when he got injured?
Güemes. That was totally his fault
full
too.
Speed. Why are you gonna go in full speed when this one dude's going in crazy as well? It's when you go in full speed and you tap it to the side, and you're just risking just putting yourself.
Who goes 2 studded tackles in midfield?
Yeah, and
obviously, it's the Güemes.
Full blast. He kicks the ball full blast, so his.
Ruben Sambuesa has never, he's such a clean player that he would.
I think John's on. To me, it's pretty much like the Club America players are like the boy who cried wolf because Sambuesa, Arroyo, a couple of the other guys to a lesser degree, but these guys embellish too much for my liking, and it's. The problem is when they do get fouled and it's aggressive, it's hard to tell, especially with the biggest offender for my money is Arroyo. Arroyo goes down like he's sniped at least 4 or 5 times a game, and then even during this game, he went down on the sideline and he was grabbing and gesturing to the ref, and I think the other player might have gotten a second yellow because of that. And in the replays, you could tell it was never even touched. Now, we all know, and we should know that every weekend or after every set of games, the referee commission will review the games and will go over the calls. If this happens week after week, and it's found out that a couple of these players and there's one, and it's obviously not just America, but America being one of the more prominent teams, if this happens week after week, it's only natural that the refs would be a little more apprehensive about giving calls towards the players. I think that's the natural, it's sort of the natural progression because the players.
When did Arroyo basically get thrown off? It was right after the call where Kahneman goes in there 2 studded and hard fouls Sambu, which should have been an automatic red. Well, obviously Arroyo, and I'm saying, and I'm not, condoning Arroyo's reaction. I'm just saying is that they've been seeing it for quite a while now. At least, I've been noticing the officiating going against America for the past 2 years.
So that's the thing. That's the thing.
And they're just like if the official's not going to call it, well, obviously there's going to be street justice, if you will. And I'm not saying that that's right, but
that's where no, you're right. You're absolutely right. But that's where the players come in because if we essentially have to part off, or at least the baseline has to be whether or not you believe that the officiating is corrupt. If you believe it's corrupt, then obviously it's a lot easier to buy into a lot of these other theories that certain teams are benefited or not benefited by the officiating. If you don't believe the refereeing is corrupt, and it's simply that the pace of the game has surpassed the abilities of the referee on the field, then that's where the players come into this. The players have to be aware that there are cameras all over the field, and that any sort of gamesmanship that they employ to get an advantage will be called back, will be reviewed, and if it's not called during a game, the referees are going to be much more hesitant to sort of be on their side when something does go down. And I feel like there are some repeat offenders. Like I think Sambuesa, one of his traits as a player, and I think it's a compliment to him, is his ability to draw fouls. But if you draw out of 10 instances, you draw 8 fouls, but the other 2 are simply you embellishing and trying to get somebody sent off or to get a penalty, those are going to stick out even more. And in the next week when it's a different ref is going to come around, he's already going to know that 2 or 3 of these guys on the field are guys that like to embellish and look to get players sent off and look to get advantages. And so it becomes this weird cyclical thing that happens where, the players are fouled, the referee doesn't believe them, or the players aren't fouled, the referee believes them, and next thing you know, the games get out of hand. And I think the players are maybe not as responsible as the referees, but they have a big part to play in this.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, and you're right about Sambu. I mean, it is a virtue. I mean, he has the ability to hide the ball well.
Yes.
And I mean, Cuauhtemoc, Cuauhtemoc, in my opinion, was very good at it as well. Where he could dominate the ball with both feet and stuff like that, and he was able to hide the ball well and draw fouls. Now, obviously, you're not doing it to the point where you want to get hacked and get injured, but you're doing it to the point where, okay, maybe you draw a foul, and then the player is gonna be a little bit more cautious. Maybe that's how they're doing it. But I can understand Arroyo's frustration because you're seeing it even with the owners. I mean, Kuri's a prime example. I mean, I know. I mean,
again, I'm sorry, but these guys get it right. I mean, watch any other league, and it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
The refs make mistakes. It happens.
That's the thing. This is part of the game. And this, and I've said it before. I mean, that's part of that human error element. Is part of what makes this.
Was this past Liguilla not played with officiating controversies?
Yeah, especially the Veracruz.
Depends on who you ask.
Not necessarily against that particular team, I don't think.
Where there are no officiating controversies, honestly.
Well, isn't America the running joke is that they have the refs on their side all the time? Maybe things are evening out.
It's not a running joke. That is a fact. It is a fact.
Maybe things are evening out. The reffing is getting better, and America's not used to it. They're like, where's our player?
In my opinion, the reason why Americanistas feel like they're being targeted is because of their own players. Like as you guys said, Sambuesa knows how to embellish here and there, but look at what they do after the game's over. They're taking pictures of their injuries, trying to call them out. There's that Quintero crying racism when it never happened. Like they're basically these guys.
Aren't you just a social justice warrior?
No, it's because they don't stick to the códigos of the game, where whatever happens in the field stays in the field.
Per, do you wear a cape to work, or is it only during the podcast?
What is it?
I will admit though that should have been red, but it was such a quick such a quick play that it was hard. I mean, I could understand the ref missing it.
Well, that's the thing, we get the benefit of hindsight with the replays and the constant different angles.
Did the guy even get a yellow? Did the guy get a yellow for it?
No, he didn't even get that.
No.
Well, you know what? Here's my thing, Ron, about this whole thing. You said that you're attracted to the violence of the sport, right?
Yes, I am.
So that to you is like the steak. That's the sizzle for you, right?
That's the salsa to the carne.
What I'm saying is, if that's what you like, then you're gonna have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, but there's consequences. Like you're expecting the consequences. You're expecting the player to get sent off, and I'm like, Jesus, not even a goddamn yellow.
Did he get a stern talking to at least? Did
No, I don't think so.
Did he get a finger wag? Did he even get a finger wag?
Nothing.
I think the ref was just positioned poorly because you could see. I mean, even during the live, during the when the game was going on, you could see that was just a terrible challenge. And to be fair, that's not the first time that Kahneman goes in 2-footed or off time and takes people out. So I expect that he will be
He's probably going to start getting carded. Develop a reputation for it. I mean, Sambuesa has a terrible reputation with the refs.
But you know what? I think Kahneman got a red card in his first official game for Atlas. I'm pretty sure he did. If it wasn't the first, it was the second for a really rash challenge. So I imagine that much like Sambuesa and Arroyo and all these other guys, the refs also take note of guys that sort of get away with those kinds of plays, and they'll keep an eye on him. And there's probably going to be something that will happen within 2-3 weeks where he'll be thrown off for something he thinks he didn't do, and the people from Atlas will cry, and they'll go on Capitanes and whatever. And then it's actually Vergara said something very interesting yesterday where he said that it's ridiculous for Kuri to go on complaining about referee calls when he's also been on the receiving end of bad referee decisions, and he cited a game against Chivas. I think it was about, I don't know if it was last season or the season before, and I actually went and looked for the video, and he was right. But that's the thing is, like, that's what's so weird about this. Like, all the club owners know, all 18 of these guys know that at some point or another they will be on the receiving end, or they'll be benefiting from referee mistakes. So it's ridiculous. I mean, it's part of the whole thing. It's part of the whole circus.
They actually brought up that question to the Veracruz owner on Univision. They actually brought that up, and his response to it was great. He said he's like, I didn't see it. I was in Florida.
Oh God, that's rich. That is, I mean, it gives us something to talk about. And I think
that's what it is. It's the part of the novela.
Absolutely.
They get all this free.
Absolutely.
Look at Joel. Joel's first question was like the biggest novela question of the night. Did you hear that Layun might have a kid with another woman? Come on.
Yes.
We're doing an hour-and-a-half podcast talking about soccer. We talk about what happens on the field like 10% of the time.
Well, that's what people tune in for. Us Mexicans, we love our drama. We have made a tremendous television business out of it, and it's no surprise that it spills on to the rest of the Mexican culture and lifestyle and especially sports. If it's not with soccer, it's a thing with the basketball association and what happened during the Olympic qualifiers and if it wasn't that, it was the Olympic Committee. The way they were sponsored by such and such, and this and that, it's always something that's going on, that always seems that it's much more important than what's going on in the field. But at the end of the day, that's all I care about is really the results, and the players that come through that can help a national team.
Hey, I was looking at the replay, and the actually Arroyo, I think, is in the way of the ref for him to get a good view at what happened during the play. So that might have been an issue. It's
always Arroyo, man.
Yeah, why is Arroyo going to go knock somebody out with his elbow when you're up 3-0? I mean, it didn't matter anyway. He's going to get...
He threw an elbow?
Yeah.
Arroyo did?
An elbow right after that, the guy went in on him. And he just elbowed some random...
An elbow was a red in 3 games.
Well, you know what? Benedetto he was interviewed, I think, yesterday. And he said something very interesting. He said, all players, any professional player that's on the field in any country, any league, they're all hotheads, man. They're all hotheads to a certain degree, and things get out of hand. That just happens, But the thing is, there are patterns with certain players, and, I think the referees pick up on them, and that's what leads to all this drama.
Yeah.
It's funny, Daryl Royal, who was a coach around here, is known for having some great quotes, like John Wooden with the quotes, just really good quotes. One of the quotes he said about football, and I think this has a lot to do with soccer, he said that football is a game that is best played by angry people. And I think soccer is, I'm not saying that's how it's best played, but I think that we see a lot of that in Liga MX. Is there's a lot of angry dudes.
I just, to me it's weird because...
And mostly they're in America, too.
Oh, stop. They're not. Like 95% of them are on America. Come on.
Now, hey, what do you guys think of
America owning now the term campeonísimo, since they are the team with the most titles.
I think it's a pathetic attempt at attention.
I think it's a terrific attempt at trolling, if nothing else.
I know.
I think it's totally deserved. Honestly, the America is now,
but it's not
the
a
one
term.
with the most championships.
It's
the usage of the term.
Yeah. The big red machine. That's all it is. It's just a name of a period of time.
What was what they used to call the USA, the '92 Olympic basketball team? They were called
the Dream Team.
The Dream Team, right? Now, the USA has won a bunch of gold medals at the Olympics after that in basketball, and with some very, very good teams, and
but no one is.
Right, and so, but even then, it would be unnecessary for anyone else to be like, oh no, this is the new Dream Team.
You know what I love
about Team. It's just, I think it's a terrific attempt at trolling, like I said, but it does, it does make you question, like, who handles these social media accounts, because it's just like, it must be some fresh-faced, like, college kid that's like, yeah, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, but you know what? It was a Twitter thing that came out. Is that what it was? A little Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a tweet because they took the official photo and they're talking to the Campeonísimo because obviously America has more titles than any team in Mexican soccer.
Right.
And obviously, Chivas.
Let's our resident Chivas. Let's see.
Their old timers are pissed off because they're thinking that Campeonísimo is only for teams that have won the double, the league and the Copa, and for some reason, Chivas thinks that they're the only teams in Mexico that have done the double, and that's not true.
Is there a law that they pass laws?
No.
Mira aquí él dice en el código.
No. But I think the argument is from Chivas is that they were, back in the day they won whatever 4 or 5 titles in a row, and that's what they're hanging their hat on. But I think technically speaking,
well, let's hear from a Chivas.
There you go.
Yeah, that's Joel. Joel, when you think of the Campeonísimo, do you think of somebody's breathing really hard, by the way? So let's.
Sorry, just.
They're excited. I'm gonna say something.
Yeah, it sounded like toilet flushing.
So Joel, do you consider the Campeonísimo as the period of time when it happened, or do you think, when I think of Chivas, I think Campeonísimo?
Nah, I think that term could be used for any team. Because if you look back, León was a Campeonísimo before Chivas. The only thing is they just weren't popular, so it didn't stick with them. And Chivas hasn't been Campeonísimo in like 60 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Almost Atlas time.
They honestly can't say anything about it. They shouldn't even...
Necaxa and Puebla were also Campeonísimo not too long ago.
Yeah, if anything, it should encourage them to do better.
In the league, if anybody had the longest period of excellence, it would be this group of Chivas teams from the mid 50s to the mid 60s, where they won 8. How many did they win? 9.
Yeah, but that's like if you had like Real Madrid going back to when they won all those Champions Leagues.
You're saying that
back in the 50s.
That it just that they were so good that everyone else just sucked. Is that?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying not to hold on to that.
Oh,
well,
right.
keep in mind one of the things that made Guadalajara a very, very good team back then. They were one of the few teams in Mexico that had their own facilities. A bunch of teams, including America, they didn't have their own facilities. So Chivas back then had a lot of things going for them in terms of infrastructure, coaching,
good rivalries.
And the thing is, as the teams became more professional, they kind of paid the price because they didn't get with the times.
Stuck in their own ways.
Well,
that's why it hurts them so much when they see other teams
Winning.
Now, like Joel, do you get mad? Do you get mad like at tonight's game that Chivas loses to Juarez in Copa MX?
Nah, to me it was to be expected. The team had been looking bad since the end of last season. They lost what? They lost against the two worst teams, which at that point was Dorados and Santos.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by this point, their last 8 games, they only have 1 win. They have about 1 win, 3 draws. No, 4 draws, 3 defeats. That's not counting the recent loss.
Yeah. Now, speaking of, I don't want to digress here, but speaking of Copa MX, like yesterday, Cruz Azul lost to Venados, and you got to watch out for those Venados, man, those deers, man, because they can come out of nowhere and just wreck it.
That's actually a big problem out where I live.
They can wreck your face. Is that what you're saying?
No, they can just they can come out and
you just love to just stick the dagger in the. Take it.
No. I'm trolling somebody.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, speaking of deer, wasn't there a big soccer member who had an incident?
Yeah, with the deer.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Cruz Azul. That deer came out of nowhere and boom, wrecked that night.
That's terrible.
What? What did I say?
It's funny. I'm with you, man. Like it's just someone is probably going to be offended, but I'm not.
Pinches venados, cabrón. No.
All right, so let's wrap the show up with some comments that were made yesterday at the MLS Media Day by the midfielder for Sporting Kansas City or Sporting KC, Benny Fieldhaber. Y'all remember Benny?
Mm-hmm. Who's that?
He was the one that scored the
Dagger 2007 Gold Cup final.
2007.
Great volley, yeah.
Soldier from outside. That's the goal from the furthest distance that the U.S. has ever scored in Mexico, because it was actually outside the area.
It was just outside the box. It was like 19 yards out.
That's what I mean. It was probably the furthest, because everything that they score is
that's true.
Everything is it's anyway. So he had some comments which I actually have here. He was talking about a little I guess his commentary on how he thinks Jurgen has done, which I will play for y'all here. We'll go one by one.
To the fact that Jurgen's not going to call me. I mean, if I played the year that I played this last year and I'm not getting a call, I'm not going to get an opportunity under Jurgen, and I mean that's something I just have to accept. It's I wouldn't say frustrating, just almost sad, kind of, that I feel like I'm playing the best soccer of my career, but I don't get the opportunity to play for my country. So yeah, it's something that I've kind of accepted, and it is what it is. It's not going to happen with Jurgen as the coach.
So there you
Sour
have
grapes.
Well,
no, he's got a point. He's got a point, and I'll get this out of the way quickly. I think that he made some very good points, because one of the things that he said specifically was that Jurgen Klinsmann is using a national team with an eye towards the future and not really towards the present. And I think that's a pretty accurate assessment of what he's done. And I think it sort of goes hand in hand with the very obviously poor youth development that happens in this country, because while, for example, Jordan Morris is a kid with a lot of very good intangibles that you could see translating to the professional game, the fact that he started getting minutes on the national team, I mean, even if it was friendlies, that just doesn't, I mean, it's hard, man. You can't, there's a certain level of I feel like it's almost that the Americans are a little naive in that sense. They feel that they can reinvent the wheel when it comes to youth development. It's not going to happen. The national team is not meant to be a development tool. You have to give players a grace period to adapt to the speed of the game at the international level, but it's not a tool. You don't use the national team for development. Even the younger teams, like the under-17s and under-20s, like the amount of development that happens there is minimal, really. I mean, that should be happening with the clubs where they're there every single day. But to what Fellhaber said, I mean, he's absolutely on point. I mean, it's not a good time to be a U.S. fan right now. there's a big gap in quality between the projection of the younger players and what they could potentially bring at some point to the national team and what's actually available to the coach right now. And even so, he is choosing to go hunting in around Europe for players that have a passport, at least eligibility for a passport, so he can incorporate them onto the team regardless of their qualifications. I mean, I think Feilhaber's on point, to be honest.
No, I agree 100%. I think he's on point. It seems that the Klinsmann, he's always thinking about tomorrow, down the road, and it's like I for one think
security, Ronnie. That's all it is. You're never held accountable if you keep looking forward.
That's right.
In this market,
here's the thing. I for one believe that if Donovan was at the World Cup in 2014, they probably would have gone past Belgium.
Of course.
I mean, but at this,
they would have won their group.
And it's my point is he's trying to reinvent the wheel, and Jurgen's not going to change the culture of American soccer. So he might as well just pick the best players he has.
But do you think though leaving Landon though? I still think that was more personal than an eye to the future.
Well, he took it. He took it personal because
he's pointing at like 8 years in the future. So I mean, that World Cup, that last World Cup, should have been players that literally the best what they had, regardless of age.
And the U.S., just like Mexico, are a team that cannot. If you have your best player, you cannot afford
to leave him out. Yeah,
leave him out. You just can't.
But regardless
of your personal.
Even so, I will disagree with you guys. I don't think Donovan would have made much of a difference because one of his biggest assets as a player was his speed, and I don't think by the time the World Cup came around he had that as a high point in his skill set. I don't think it would have made much of a difference.
You bring him back. I mean, Lothar Matthäus.
Yeah.
When he started out, he was an attacking midfielder. That was his position.
Well, you know what?
He ended being a libero, a sweeper.
Listen, around 2007, I made a comment on the U.S. forum about the fact that I thought, in my opinion, that Neri Castillo was a better 1v1 player because I thought in my opinion, he had a better ability to get past players 1v1, couple that with speed. I mean, obviously, Landon Donovan went on to be, maybe a little bit better of a player throughout his career. But I don't think that Donovan would have worked that well even as a withdrawn player. I don't think he had that. He was always a very direct player, and that's where he thrived. I mean, if you slow the tempo of the game, I don't see where he would really be, head and shoulders above other players. In my opinion, Feilhaber would have been a better addition to the U.S. national team in 2014 than even Donovan, because Feilhaber does have that ability to slow things down and to pick passes out, and he had a pretty decent amount of vision, at least within the context of his teammates. I think he would have made at least a bigger impact compared to Donovan.
Well, what I've noticed about Jurgen over the past few years is that if you build a national team, I mean, you can't constantly bring in new guys and experiment and change things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's responded since this, or just recently.
Oh, Jurgen?
Yeah, he came back and he said, well, the thing that I get out of it, he says, the other picture is the personality, the interaction with the other players, the chemistry. So to me, that's targeting exactly what, the Landon Donovan situation.
But that's a cop out because that's it's one of the biggest things that's one of the biggest things in his job description, man.
I can't control that guy.
Because Benny Feilhaber's whole issue is the quality of play, the play that they're doing right now. Like
but apparently Feilhaber also had some locker room issues.
Yes, but you know what?
On the field, it's other aspects that he's looking at, and maybe he's not cutting it.
Well, who's to say that the locker room? Apparently, there were some reports that it was kind of broken because there was a huge influx of players that came in, while obviously technically American. They're not players that grew up within the American system, and there were some communication issues. It's hard to say that Donovan would have been a locker room cancer when when Jurgen Klinsmann is going out of his way really to fill the locker room with players that may not feel 100. Yes, sort of pretty much. You know, I mean, and I mean, I think it's a really nice thing that the American fans are welcoming to a lot of these players. But
well, what other choice do they have?
Yeah, if they protest, they won't get called. So I mean,
but I'm talking about the fans. What are the
choices? Fans.
Well, even then, I mean,
you're an American, absolutely. You're more.
I think. Well, let's be real. I mean, I think the typical U.S. fan just wants to win. They don't care who the hell. I mean, they don't know the players anyway.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, the majority of the fans that are going to be hopping on board if and when that happens, that's what they don't care. It's just win, baby. You know, that's kind of like. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, really, with the fans, you could get a taste of that if you look at the reactions from a few weeks ago when it was reported that Jesse Gonzalez had accepted the invitation to this January camp for the U.S. and then how the tide turned after he revealed, the player himself, that he didn't really understand why it was reported on so much, because he never made his decision public that he had accepted any sort of invitation, and that he was perfectly happy to stick to what he was doing with Mexico. That's sort of a microcosm of the sort of general state of mind and emotionally, where the fans are, because it's exciting. It's almost like this blue chip thing that's happening where he goes out and kind of recruiting these players, and a lot of people don't know much about him, and it seems intriguing and exciting. But it's a weird way of going about a national team program, and I don't see that as a route to success for the U.S. The only way they're going to be successful is to do what they kind of did with the Donovans and the Beasleys and the Dempseys and, to a lesser extent, the Gucci Onyeus and guys like that, guys that sort of came up and wanted to prove themselves to the world and had a chip on their shoulder. And a lot of them had varying degrees of skills, and some were better than others. And, some of them were really good and some of them were okay. And some of them made a career in Europe, others didn't. But I don't feel like, like this, what he's currently shooting for, I mean, like Ronnie said, I mean, he's got an eye on tomorrow. Every day, well, tomorrow, we're planning for this. He said that about the 2012 Olympics, they failed to qualify. So the past 3 years has been a thing about, well, the 2016 Olympics are very, very important, and then they don't qualify automatically. Now, they don't really have a plan in place. He brought some under 23s into this camp to, give the under 23s coach a chance to work with him. What is there to work with? You had 2 months ago, you had qualifiers. You had a group of kids that were together. You got to see who worked, who didn't work. I mean, just the way that everything is sort of pieced together here is it just doesn't make a lot of sense, And it's not even because I'm a Mexico fan and I'm looking for ways to hit on him. It's just that it's a head scratcher. A lot of the things that he does are head scratchers, And the Federation as well, extending his contract before the World Cup, another 4 years. I mean, it's just weird. The whole thing is weird.
I don't see what he's fighting for, because it seems like the only thing Jurgen has to choose from is mid-tier type players like Feldhaber or just typical MLS guys. So there's no real standout players that have sure spots. So it's like you have all these mid-tier type players that aren't really super great. Just
so you think they're kind of betting on let's see, poach these young kids that have dual citizenship in the hopes that they pan out?
I haven't even seen that. I mean, the Julian Green is the only guy that I see that's like their young guy, but he has been left off from. I mean, he disappeared, I think, pretty much.
He disappeared from Bayern Munich.
It just does seem like they're in a place where they're going out of their way to find eligible players as opposed to just depending on homegrown.
Well,
just look at
what I did in '94.
Mm-hmm.
And he just
Absolutely.
find just a warm body American. Can you? Okay, let's go, vámonos.
Well, and that's fine. I mean, that's fine. But
yeah,
you can't
I get that.
You can't litter the team with players like that, because the other players, at least the guys, I think one of the things that's happening is the guys that are in MLS, and there's a couple of guys that I think have had at least decent enough seasons the last 2 years that would merit some chances with the national team. Just to throw some names out there, a guy like Dax McCarty from the Red Bulls that I got to see often. To me, I think he's a better player than Mix Diskerud, who is automatically, he's like number 4 on Klinsmann's speed dial, because he keeps getting called in, and it's like I don't see what he brings to the table that a guy like Dax McCarty couldn't bring, So I think what happens is players get disillusioned because they see the pattern that Klinsmann has, and a lot of just Klinsmann can say whatever he wants, but I mean, we went through something similar with Carlos Vela, where he opted out of the national team for a couple of years, and we had Miguel Herrera that was able to go and say, hey, listen, new cycle, come in, let's work this out, this and that. I mean, just writing players off because they could be potential locker room cancers. I mean, it's like cutting off your hand to spite your face.
Well,
but just look at
very critical mistakes that Klinsmann has made over the past 4 years. And I'll get right to you, Fernando. Let me just real quick. One is that he has no base. In 4 years, he has no base. He doesn't have a group of 7 or 8 players who can call and start no matter what. He plays a different formation almost every game, so there's no cohesion, and they have no style, they have no identity, and he's been there. This is the 5th year of his contract, 5 years, and just as Daniel said, it says, oh, it's it's coming. It's coming. It's a classic consultant. Oh, you still
it's gonna happen.
Pay me, but if you follow what I'm gonna say to do, it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Well, you got to put perspective on this deal. Benny Feilhaber is like complaining that, I'm in the best state of his career, but he's playing for Kansas City, And second, he's already bitching out there to the media, so I side with Klinsmann on that one.
I think he's right in doing that, because if he's 100% certain, then he's got nothing to lose in his mind. So sure, go ahead and mouth off all you want.
Well, but then what? Afterwards, he's gonna complain. Oh well, I'm not being a starter. I'm on the bench. I already resigned my life to that. I know I'm gonna be a bench player.
You know what? I think speaking of perspective,
Hold on a sec, Christian. I did want to respond to Fernando. I do agree, half agree with you though, with your point though, because it is. You bring up a really good point. I mean, I know you do it because you want to hate on the MLS, but there is a valid point that Klinsmann has made it very clear that he doesn't necessarily view the MLS as a really high quality type of league where he wants the U.S. players playing. He clearly values the European leagues better, and that's where he wants the base of players to be playing. So I do think that you got a valid point where, if Phil Hubbard can complain, but that this guy values players in Europe, and that's where you need to be playing.
And it's true, and he's right. The best players play in Europe. That's a bottom line. And he was pissed when what's his name came from Schalke for playing the Champions League, coming to I forgot his name.
Jermaine Jones, yeah.
Yeah, that was just a terrible decision.
Well, Jermaine Jones, he had reached, that he had finished his cycle at Schalke anyway. I think that, you mentioned perspective, and I think that we have to remember that the U.S. managed to be competitive, at the very least, on the world stage with a majority of MLS players. They had some success.
Well, it's easy to bunker. That's even Greece can win an Euro.
Well, John said it perfectly. He stated it very well. There is no identity. There's no sort of feel to this team because he has deviated from what worked so well for previous U.S. national teams, and that's obviously a more defensive approach, absorb pressure, and then hit him on a counter. He's moved away from that and wants to build a team that's a little more balanced going forward. But they just don't have the players. That's what it is.
Counter. Italy won 4 World Cups.
I agree 100%.
Anyway, I see we've reached one of those awkward silences.
That's because we're talking about the U.S. national team.
Wake up, Hoyle there.
Stir. Nope, nothing magic's happening down there.
I will touch on a little bit more on the U.S. team since, one of the things that he had mentioned about, I know that he's betting on saying that it's all about the youth movement and bringing in younger players. He is kind of blessed, man. With the first round of qualifiers, that they arguably got the easiest group. So that gives them that bottom at least another year. Because he's going to qualify to the Hex. I think they're going to make a meal of it. I still think they're going to qualify.
Yeah, but understand the Hex starts this year. It starts in October.
In the fall, yeah.
So it's not where there's no more one-offs. So it's going to be 2-2. So after 4 games, if reality starts to set for the U.S., maybe if they drop one at home, I think it could be Bruce Arena coaching the U.S.
It would have to be something very extreme. Like something has to happen.
Never had to have a bombero come in. So
yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, they respect the cycles that the coaches they have, and it would have to be something extremely. I mean, if he didn't get fired after losing to Jamaica in the Gold Cup, you know what I mean, and subsequently to Mexico in the CONCACAF Cup game, I'm not sure. I mean, like short of failing to qualify, I mean, even if the U.S. doesn't make the Olympics, if they don't, do well at Copa America, I'm not sure that would be enough to get rid of him. I mean, they would have.
Bring up an interesting point, and it's something that that I've been thinking about as well. And I swear to God, I just forgot what I was going to say.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, what's about the youth national team? That's okay.
I remember. About the U.S. and the international. I mean, this whole little brouhaha just proves that this country is a long way from becoming a soccer country.
Yes.
Bill Hubbard makes these comments, and I was on the Twitter last night. I was seeing who's gonna respond, who's gonna react. There were a couple of beat writers that said something, but the national guys stayed away like it was plutonium. They
don't want to bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, it's so sad to me. It's like this would be on if this happened, if this was let's say Gallito, someone who's done some stuff Mexico, put on the national team, and then just all of a sudden didn't like a Torrado. Let's say this was Torrado. If he had said this when he was 29, 30, 31, it would have been on every page.
Every single, yep. It would have been talked about for days, at least.
Weeks.
Yeah.
This is still a soccer country, though. It's just not geared for the U.S. But
that's the problem.
But there is a lot of soccer in the U.S. Like, this is a good place to live. I mean, if you like the sport, every summer you get the best teams coming over.
That's the biggest.
They play soccer here, not football.
Well, that's the biggest draw for players that come to MLS, like the lifestyle, the ability to have a real sort of low-key lifestyle and still make a decent amount of money. But I think John just says what he said is very interesting because I've been arguing this point for over 10 years, on the forums, like there's no linear progression to this. There's no you hear a lot of fluff pieces about MLS and how it's growing. Well, relative to what? It's like the best leagues and the best teams are still in Europe, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
I don't know. You never know that, man.
I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. At least not within our lifetime. I mean,
not when you got Bale, Benzema, and Cristiano.
Yeah, those are the guys that, if you can bring players like that here in their prime, that's a different sport.
They need to get BBC players, Barcelona's got the MSN and Real Madrid's got the BBC.
Yeah, you're right. That's what they need is the BBC. You're absolutely right.
Oh, my goodness.
I always thought in 1998 when Michael Owen
That's communist.
You laughing at your own jokes?
No, I'm laughing at Dan. I'm laughing at Dan.
Wow. Let me add that obligatory ha 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 ha.
Anyway, I'm not sure what happened.
No, it's just Christian didn't get it because he's been MIA from the Russell camp.
Oh.
Oh, the BBC?
Yeah.
Oh, he knows what it is.
Shit. He's like, I know, I'm familiar.
I'm somewhat vaguely familiar with the BBC. I watch Madrid games too sometimes.
Yeah, I watch it for the news.
You guys are
dick and fart jokes, dude.
We'd gone almost an hour and 40 minutes before our first dick joke, so I guess that's
I think that's progress, right?
Yeah,
well, no, our first dick joke came up about 2 minutes in.
Oh, did we?
Talking about the weather, yes.
Man.
Oh, that's right. You're absolutely right. I was trying to keep, the deadpan,
Way to keep it juvenile, guys.
Yeah.
I feel young again. Thank you.
That's my kind of humor, anyway. So let's do it.
Anyway, so I guess we should wrap this up. Just one last point on Jurgen. The fact that I mean, he is, God bless him for selling the bill of goods that he did, because it's I don't know how long it's going to take. And I think it's like one of those inevitable things, but he kind of put the brakes on what was happening there. And
I just
I
want
don't
him
know.
to be coached during Columbus,
I feel like
that match.
I feel like it coincided. I think that Mexico went through the same thing during the 2010 World Cup qualifiers. There was a huge gap between the older players, late 20s, early 30s, and the younger players, the Gios and the Bellas, and even the Guardados. There was a big gap of those mid 20s guys that weren't there, and it was rough. And it just so happened that by the next cycle, the 2014 cycle, there was a lot more players to pick from that were younger and a little hungrier, and it made things a little bit easier for Chepo, despite the fact that the ship almost sank anyway during the qualifiers. It sort of overlapped with what was happening with Jurgen, and unfortunately for U.S. fans,
that's a pretty good distinction though, Christian, though, because the big difference was the same players that are playing well now was the same team that Chepo lost.
Yeah.
But I think the big difference with this U.S. team is that the talent
is not there.
Lacking.
It's
and
not
so
there right
I
now.
potentially see even a worse hex than possibly as complicated or even worse than what Mexico went through this last one.
Well, if he's smart, he's going to realize that that there's a couple players they have in the pipeline that are very interesting, talent-wise, but they're not going to be ready within the next 2 years anyway. These are kids that are still 18, 19. They're going to need a couple of years to get confident and be able to contribute. So if it comes down to that, if everything catches fire, he's going to have to look towards some of these MLS guys that he's already snubbed, and you got to wonder how they're gonna see that. When the time comes when they need to be called in to help put out the fire. Some of these guys might not be in the same kind of form. They may not even be as motivated to come in. And I feel like all of this is part of his job to maintain the hope in all these players that are eligible. Even if you're not going to call them in, you don't need to tell them that. You could just Mexican coaches are very good at that. Oh, the door's open for everybody, and this and that, and this and the other. Even if it's coach speak, it at least maintains the illusion that the coach is doing his job and is going to try to put the best team together. With Klinsmann, you don't get that. You just know that he's got his guys, and if somebody pops up overseas, he'll bring them in.
But he has no base.
Well, that's the thing. He has his guys, but we don't know who those guys are because he rotates so much. And you know what?
Klinsmann reminds me. Remember that game? It was like pick up sticks, whatever. Where you throw the sticks on, you have to pick them up.
Yeah.
It seems like that's what Klinsmann does. No, they're just little pickup sticks. You have to pick it up with little sticks.
Yeah.
That's what Jurgen does with a team. It seems like he just throws. All right, let's pick the best 11 of this thing, and it never. If you guys are saying what's going to happen, then they're going to have real problems because now they're expecting these 8 guys or whatever it is that are barely getting playing time in Europe to come in and then go play in Tegucigalpa.
But you know what? They could also get lucky. I mean, the U.S., at least emotionally speaking, and this isn't a particular trait to any individual player. This is just the mentality of the athletes that are from this country. All they really need is 1 or 2 good results, and they could sort of piggyback on it. That's kind of what they did in 2013. After the friendlies they beat Germany during a friendly in 2013. That gave them a huge boost of confidence that carried them for pretty much for the remainder of the qualifiers. And the thing is, they ran out of that sort of motivational steam ran out before the World Cup, which is why when they were facing teams that were of an equal or better caliber, they had to resort to their instincts, which is more defensive and X, Y, Z, whatever. The same could happen again. If they get a good result against Costa Rica or a Panama, that might just be enough to propel them through the qualifiers. And I think maybe that's what Klinsmann is hoping for. But I mean, generally speaking, you look at the talent base that they have now, and their better players are mostly in MLS. Some of them are way past their sell-by date. Clint Dempsey could still be useful, but I mean, is he the guy that's going to be useful 3 years from now, 2 years from now? It's hard to say.
Here's my thing with Klinsmann, and I think that this is something that we're starting to see, and it's not surprising me that it's happening, but it is a little interesting. Okay, he's gone through CONCACAF. He did a Gold Cup, and then he did qualifying. It seems to me that in his mind, he's thinking, we got this. So I'm going to schedule all of my friendlies in Europe. We're going to play European teams. I'm going to bring my guys in. It's for us, the only one that matters is the World Cup. This stuff is cake for us. It seems to me that now that he's going into his second go-around with CONCACAF, that he's severely underestimating the talent level that's in this region.
I
lot
agree.
like Mexico did up until about 10 years ago.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's just
starting to bite him in the butt.
You look at a team like Costa Rica, and Costa Rica they also have a nice generation of players in their mid-20s right now. They're not going to be an easy team to beat, and a team like Panama is a team that is so tough for Mexico, but they are not as tough for the U.S., and it's kind of weird because they match up very well with the U.S. I mean, physically and, at least skill-wise, I don't see why they should be inferior to the U.S., but, I think it'll come down to, like, if they start getting bad results, it could pile up, but all they really need is one result, maybe 2 results, and that could be enough for them.
And they're probably going to get it at the Cup. They'll probably, beat Uruguay or something on some freak goal.
And that'll be, and then you're going to start seeing the fluff about, the resurgence.
Exactly.
And so
American resurgence.
Yeah, and that's why. Exactly. That's why I don't
heroically lose in the semifinals.
That's the thing, with the U.S. man. Being a rival and such a big rival to Mexico, I mean, there's a level of gratification when they don't meet their expectations, the fans and the team's expectations, like in the Gold Cup. But if you put that aside, I mean, it really is hard to see where the abundance of talent is with this current U.S. team, without obviously talking about the younger players. Because if we're talking about younger players, there's a couple of guys that Mexico has that are also coming up, and there's a couple of guys that Panama has, namely, this Diaz kid over at Porto. So it's that's one for the future. We don't really know how those guys are going to pan out. At the moment, I mean, I'm looking at the midfield that Mexico has. I'm not really seeing, the U.S. sort of matching up well with them, on a lot of different levels. So, I think the CONCACAF Cup was a good example of that. The team didn't, it was a tight game and this and that, but generally speaking, Mexico had it under control for the majority of the game, and that's something that I look forward to because we can build on that. Us Mexicans can build on that, and there's a reason for optimism as to how much further this team can grow. I'm not entirely sure the U.S. can say that at the moment. I'm not sure that fans can look at the team and say, there's one player or these 2 players are going to somehow magically make the entire team that much better, because that's not really how it works. You know what I mean? And that's about it.
Professor, without knowing precisely what the danger is, would you say it's time for our viewers to crack each other's heads open and feast on the goo inside?
Yes, I would, Ken.
Oh, Ken Brockman, my hero.
Indeed. Well, on that note, I think that should wrap it up. Is anybody else? Well, quickly before we wrap it up, the third week of Liga MX coming. More Copa MX results are rolling in. Ronnie's been keeping us up to date with another Cruz Azul loss. Did they lose in the final minute?
Yes. So
did they have the lead and then lose it? Because
they had the lead and they lost it. So the moral is steer clear from deer.
That's right. That is the classic Cruz Azulada when they have the lead and lose it late.
Yes, it is.
It's the only way.
All right. Hey, Leon won too. They beat Necaxa 5-0. I was just reading that.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
All right, homies.
¿Hay dudas o qué?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had a comment?
No, I've got nothing else.
I'm gonna close out. With. Do you have anything to close out with, John?
Do I have anything to close? No, you, by all means, please.
All right.
You
There you go.
Sommelier, like bringing out a fine wine to.
Christian's former team, or is his new team?
That is, wow, man. No, I'm neutral. I'm the neutral Liga MX guy.
Does anybody have anything to add or anything to watch for coming up? I know that Chivas has a big game against Tigres. Is Almeida going to finally get his first win, Joel? Is this the game?
It looks difficult. He has about a 4-match winless streak at home.
Hey, why you gotta be so negative, man? He's got a 2-tie streak on really difficult matches.
He's playing the best team of the league.
More importantly, Joel, does any player stand a chance of getting a surprise paternity suit right before the game?
That's probably from either in America or Pachuca.
Okay, but not Chivas.
Oh, great.
Nah,
say what happened at America or Pachuca.
No, that happened when La Volpe was. He
ruined
it for the players who had the podóloga, and they tried to get in on the action. What happened?
They use goat condoms over there in Chivas. So
goat skin condoms.
Yes.
Nice.
All right, gents.
Fair enough. Well, I guess that'll wrap it up. Is it? Anybody else have anything? Any last? Any last comments?
No.
Other than Monterrey and their amazing fans are cheering the team to victory. They're tied for first place, and I thought we should definitely acknowledge the best team right now.
They do have the most passionate fans, though.
Yes, definitely.
Most destructive, that's for sure.
Yeah, they'll put out fires by any means necessary. That's
I just want to say that I found it extremely distasteful of Alfredo Talavera to reveal that he's already been contacted to be an overage player for the Olympics.
Oh, damn, that sucks.
No, I think it's a great decision. It's just that he shouldn't have been revealing it because it wasn't necessary. We have 3 young goalkeepers right now that are actually 4 young goalkeepers. Well, 3 goalkeepers in the Liga MX that are getting minutes, plus Jesse Gonzalez. It just seemed unnecessary given the fact that there was just a recent under-23 camp just this past week. I found it a little distasteful. I just want to say that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It sucks that they're letting that stuff out that they shouldn't, but oh well.
You know, we did have a comment. It was a question from Mexican reformist. I guess we should clear this up, quickly before.
What, on YouTube?
On the YouTube. His question was, "What's the BBC joke?" So maybe.
Tell him to Google it, but do it in incognito mode, please.
Yeah.
Tell him to Google it, but don't Google it at work.
Yes.
No, Ronnie already did that. You get a bunch of pictures of the British Broadcasting Company.
Actually,
it's quite safe.
Actually, tell him to Google Mr. Hands.
Well, he can't because the Russell Camp thread is private.
Urban Dictionary is your best bet.
You guys are the Kentucky Fried Movie.
Holy Christ, you guys are sick, man.
Have y'all ever seen the Kentucky?
Well, that's what. We're glad you're back, Christian, because we thought we ran you off, dude.
Well, you thought BBC jokes would make me run off?
I thought that they scared you off.
Yeah,
no,
Dan,
I wish that was the case.
Dan thought we ran you off.
No.
I was thinking, he's an East Coast liberal, so definitely Ronnie was definitely gonna get under his skin.
Oh, not at all, man. No, I got much thicker skin, man.
The fact that you were gonna clutch your pearls and shake your fan is such profane.
Yeah.
It is good to have you back, man.
Oh, it's great to be back. Obviously, I miss you guys and get to do this every week. So it's been fun today.
Excellent. Well, that anybody else have any comments? Fernando, you've mentioned your Monterrey. Dan, any shout outs to your boys?
Yeah, sure. Piojo gets his first loss of the season this Friday. How about that?
Is that against Santos?
Word.
Here's my shocking statement for the night. Piojo ends 2016 as Mexico's national team coach.
Whoa. Whoa.
That is pretty shocking, but that's only if the cartels take care of Martinoli, though.
Oh, speaking of cartels, did you guys hear about the partnership that Kate del Castillo and Chapo got into?
I think everybody knows about that, man.
Wait, with
we just found out about this? Were you under a rock?
No. They got it. They formed a partnership in Coca-Cola.
Oh.
Yeah. Chapo provided the coca and Kate provided la cola.
Oh, nice.
You guys didn't know about
That's
that?
like playing T-ball, man. You set yourself up for that one. Nice. Very nice.
All right, I'm going to hit this stop broadcast button.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, before the BBC jokes come out again.
All right, we're out.